Imagine you wake up in a small control room. There are screens showing a bedroom, speakers playing an alarm, and one large red button marked Get Up. You press it. Nothing happens. Somewhere outside the room, your body rolls over and checks its phone. This is the basic mystery of consciousness. Your brain processes light, sound, memories, decisions, and the urgent diplomatic crisis of whether 5 more minutes will ruin your life. But why does any of that feel like something from the inside? A calculator can process numbers. A camera can detect light. A chatbot can produce an intelligent answer. Yet processing information is not obviously the same thing as experiencing it. So what is consciousness? The simplest first answer is that consciousness is subjective experience. It is the fact that there is something it is like to be you right now. The taste of coffee, the sting of embarrassment, the particular blueness of blue, and the silent suspicion that everyone else received better instructions. But the word consciousness is used for several different things, and this causes trouble immediately. First, consciousness is not the same as intelligence. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems, learn, plan, or adapt. A system might be very good at chess without feeling the quiet despair of losing a bishop. Second, consciousness is not simply awareness in the sense of detecting information. Your brain constantly responds to things you do not consciously notice. You adjust your balance while walking. You process the shape of letters while reading. You may drive along a familiar road and suddenly realize you remember none of the previous 3 turns. The driving still happened, which is reassuring in a limited way. Third, consciousness is not identical to reportability. Reportability means being able to say what you noticed. Usually, if you are conscious of something, you can report it. But the connection is imperfect. Babies and many animals cannot describe their experiences in words. A person who cannot speak may still have a vivid inner life. And sometimes we experience something without having the vocabulary to package it neatly for customs. This leaves subjective experience itself. Pain does not merely cause avoidance behavior. It hurts. Red does not merely trigger visual classification. It looks a certain way. Philosophers call these felt qualities qualia. The term sounds like an expensive blanket, but it refers to familiar things: the bitterness of lemon, the warmth of sunlight, the difference between hearing a trumpet and being struck by one. Now return to our control room. A scientist can inspect the wiring. Certain brain regions exchange signals. Attention shifts. Memories become available. The body responds. We can study what changes during sleep, anesthesia, brain injury, or perception. These are sometimes called the easy problems of consciousness. Not because they are actually easy. Neuroscientists would be reasonably annoyed by that description. They are easy only compared with the deeper problem, because we can imagine explaining them through mechanisms and functions. We might explain how the brain recognizes a face, focuses attention, stores a memory, or produces the sentence, "I see a red tomato." The hard problem, a phrase introduced by philosopher David Chalmers, asks why any of those physical processes are accompanied by experience at all. Why is the control room lit? Why is there an inside view rather than information processing happening entirely in the dark? If you enjoy bad drawings and careful thinking, subscribe before the little manager in your head files this thought somewhere damp. One response is physicalism. According to physicalism, consciousness is entirely produced by physical activity. There is no separate mental substance floating behind the eyes. Change the brain, and you change the experience. Anesthetic drugs can remove consciousness. Brain damage can alter perception, memory, personality, and the sense of self. Electrical or chemical changes can produce unusual experiences without consulting a ghost. The evidence connecting mind and brain is overwhelming. The difficult part is explaining exactly how brain activity becomes experience. One influential family of theories focuses on access. Imagine the brain as an office full of small departments. One handles vision, another handles sound, another remembers your former email password but refuses to reveal it. Most processing stays local, but some information enters a global workspace, rather like being placed on the main office notice board. Once there, it becomes widely available for reasoning, memory, decision-making, and verbal report. Global neuronal workspace theory proposes that conscious access occurs when information is broadcast across large brain networks. This helps explain why conscious information is flexible. If you consciously see smoke, you can describe it, remember it, investigate it, or leave the building with unusual efficiency. But critics ask whether global broadcasting explains experience itself or only explains what information does after it becomes conscious. A notice board may coordinate an office. It does not obviously explain why the notice board has feelings about smoke. Another proposal is integrated information theory. It begins with the idea that experience is both rich and unified. You do not experience color, shape, sound, and location as separate envelopes. They arrive as one complicated moment. The theory links consciousness to a system's capacity to integrate information so that the whole cannot be reduced to independent parts. The more tightly the information is unified in the relevant way, the greater the proposed consciousness. This is ambitious because it tries to identify consciousness with a measurable property of systems. It is also controversial. Critics dispute how the proposed quantity should be calculated, and worry that the theory may assign consciousness to systems that seem unlikely candidates. In 2025, a major adversarial collaboration tested predictions from integrated information theory and global neuronal workspace theory. The results challenged important predictions from both. Neither theory emerged carrying a small gold trophy marked consciousness solved. There are other approaches. Higher-order theories suggest that a mental state becomes conscious when the mind represents itself as being in that state. Seeing red is not enough. The system must, in some sense, register that it is seeing red. Predictive processing approaches describe the brain as constantly generating models of what is out there and updating them using incoming signals. On this view, perception is not a camera feed. It is a controlled prediction, constrained by sensory evidence. Your control room is not passively watching the world. It is sketching the world very quickly and correcting the embarrassing parts. These theories may explain important features of consciousness without fully answering the hard problem. That does not make them failures. A theory can reveal how the control room operates even if we still do not know why the lights are on. Some philosophers think the hard problem has been made unnecessarily mysterious. Perhaps once every cognitive function is explained, nothing remains. Asking why brain activity also feels like something may be like asking why water is wet, after fully understanding how water molecules behave. Others think that comparison misses the point. We can derive the behavior of water from physical facts, but even a perfect map of someone's brain seems to describe activity from the outside. It does not appear to contain the painfulness of pain. This gap inspires the philosophical zombie. A philosophical zombie is physically identical to you. It walks, talks, laughs, complains about passwords, and says it has an inner life. But inside, there is no experience. The control room is completely dark. If such a being is genuinely conceivable, Chalmers argues, then physical facts may not logically guarantee consciousness. Critics reply that the zombie only seems conceivable because our concepts are confused. Perhaps imagining an identical brain without consciousness is like imagining a perfect triangle with 4 sides. You can say the words, the proposed object remains suspicious. The zombie also reveals another problem. You cannot directly inspect anyone else's experience. You infer other minds from behavior, bodies, brains, and similarities to yourself. This works well with humans. It becomes less certain with animals, whose nervous systems and behavior differ from ours. In 2024, the New York Declaration on Animal Consciousness stated that there is strong scientific support for conscious experience in mammals and birds, and at least a realistic possibility in many other animals, including cephalopods, insects, and crustaceans. The same problem now appears in a newer and shinier control room. Modern AI can discuss fear, pleasure, selfhood, and consciousness with extraordinary fluency. But intelligent language is not proof of subjective experience. A system can generate the sentence, "I am suffering," without suffering, just as a smoke alarm can announce fire without becoming anxious about the curtains. The reverse possibility also matters. If a machine ever did become conscious, behavior alone might not settle the question. We would need a reliable theory connecting architecture and activity to experience. We do not currently have one. Confident claims that today's AI is definitely conscious or definitely could never be conscious usually travel farther than the evidence. This matters because consciousness is tied to moral status. A rock does not care what happens to it. A conscious creature can have experiences that go well or badly. If an animal, machine, or damaged human patient can suffer, our obligations change. Consciousness also matters personally because it shapes what we mean by being alive. Your body performs countless operations without your involvement, yet a narrow stream of experience becomes your world. Everything you love, fear, remember, or regret appears within it. So perhaps the control room metaphor was wrong. There may be no tiny observer inside the brain watching a set of screens. If there were, we would have to ask what makes that observer conscious, and then build another, smaller control room inside its head. Eventually, the furniture becomes difficult to draw. Consciousness may not be a thing sitting at the center of mental activity. It may be a process created by the activity itself. A global broadcast, integrated information, self-representation, biological regulation, prediction, or some combination we have not yet understood. We know consciousness depends closely on the brain. We can track many conditions under which it appears, changes, and disappears. We can distinguish it from intelligence, detection, and the ability to talk about what is happening. What we cannot yet explain is why the machinery has an inner surface. You began in a control room, wondering why the red button did not work. But the stranger possibility is that there is no operator pressing buttons at all. There is only the machinery, somehow experiencing its own operation. And, for the moment, the lights are on.